So for everyone who's jumping on, Raina's handler, I'm assuming I can call you by your name if you're comfortable with that. So this is Lindsey, Raina's handler. And then I'm Jay. I think a lot of you know that. I'm Bugatti's handler. We wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some things with molossers, specifically Corsos, relating to not just service dog work, but also in general, what it looks like to own one of these dogs, and then just kind of some of the unique things about training them, especially if you're not used to being around them or just used to working with kind of molossers in general. Bugatti will hop on later. Don't worry, you'll get plenty of Bugatti time. We're just as we kind of start this up, we have a list of questions that we'll be going through so that, you know, we make sure that we want to hit on the important points that you guys reached out to us. Thank you all again for, you know, submitting your questions, letting us know what you guys wanted to hear, what you guys wanted to learn more about. And then if you guys have questions kind of come up throughout that, feel free to submit them and we'll try to get to them as we go on. Let me pull up my list of questions I have here. I don't know, Lindsey, if there's anything you wanted to talk about first or go over anything. Otherwise, we'll just jump right into the questions.
I think we can go right into the question.
Perfect. All right. All right. Hey, everybody. All right. Got a good amount of people on. So the first one, we'll start off with inherent traits. This is just kind of things specific to Corsos, which often applies to a lot of molosser, a lot of Mastiff breeds in general. One question that I got rather repetitively was how well do they connect with their handler? I guess I'll talk a little bit, and then Lindsey, if you want to add or, you know, have your own kind of interpretation of it, I'll hand it off to you. So in my experience working with Mastiffs, they're very intuitive with their handlers. They're a sensitive breed in the sense where they can not reach out, but they feel things very deeply. A lot of times you can train them to be more stable and train them to kind of learn to make independent decisions, but they do, similar to shepherds in a separate way, feed off of a lot of what you are feeling internally. So one example that I've seen with Bugatti and I is that if I'm feeling, you know, if I see somebody walk up to us and I just get a super sketchy feeling about them, I may be a little uneasy around them. One of the things I noticed early on with Bugatti and other Mastiffs that I've worked with as well was they would definitely be on edge around that person, or you could tell they might have a reaction to that person, whether that's feeding off of my energy, what I'm giving off, or what that other person, maybe they're weird or maybe they're a little bit off that day. They're kind of to the point, they connect with their handler, but they're very they're sensitive, but they also have their own interpretation of it. So they'll feel what you're feeling, but they kind of internalize it, and they'll have their own reaction or their own decision to make. If you aren't good about solidifying, hey, these are the choices that I think you should follow. So if you're not good about either teaching them or redirecting them from the get-go, they have no problem essentially taking manners into their own hands and making their own decision, which may or may not always be the best or most appropriate decision for that situation. I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, actually, I agree with that answer almost 100%, if not more. So in my experience, I've worked with both labs and Goldens as training them to become service dogs for other people, mainly for PTSD or mobility, and then training Raina for myself. So I definitely see exactly what you mean. So when I'm out with a lab or a Golden and somebody who seems a little bit sketchy is like coming towards me and the dogs feel that I'm feeling uncomfortable, if it's a lab or a Golden, usually their response is a little more like, oh, you're feeling bad, let me like lean on you, or let me just kind of like give you some sort of touch, versus when Raina saw it, she would be a little bit more like, I need to get in between this. So she wasn't given the proper choice. So my boyfriend also trains service dogs, so he would take over if he saw that Raina wasn't making the correct choice. Then she would take it into her own hands. So that is one of exactly what you said, a little bit of a downfall, but in certain cases, so depending on what kind of work you would need, it would actually be amazing to have a dog that would want to take charge, like pulling you forward, getting you out of a situation. But exactly what you said, teach them what you want in those specific situations. And as hard as you can during that time that you're training to control as much as you can and inside yourself, that might be one of the hardest parts about training these guys. But they do really, really feel exactly what you feel, but don't show it the same way a lot of other breeds do.
Right, I would agree with that. And I think that's something very important to note about the breed is that while they do connect well with their handlers and probably on a little bit more, I don't say an intense level, but they probably connect deeper with their handlers than I would say typical breeds like you mentioned, Labs or Goldens. While they connect on that level, they oftentimes will also have no problem taking that what they feel and then making their own decisions from it, basically, as you said, which is really good because it leads us into our next question. Do they feed off their handler's anxiety, or are they stable enough to figure things out for themselves? In my experience, it really depends on the foundation you give them. In general, I would say they can feed off of a handler's anxiety, but rather than internalizing the anxiety, where I feel like shepherds usually will tend to do, they will act on it. So kind of as you said, like with Raina as an example, if she felt that maybe you were, feeling a little sketchy about somebody, just as she would kind of step in. I see that behavior with Bugatti in similar instances where they'll want to, rather than be like, oh my gosh, that person, oh my gosh, they'll turn around and go, okay, well, my handler's not doing okay with this. I'm going to take charge. I'm going to shut down this situation, which as service dogs, at least, isn't always the best option. I mentioned like foundational work is especially important when finding a stable Corso in the first place is huge, but foundational work as far as like, even from the get-go, training your pup to, hey, when you see this kind of situation or you feel uneasy in a situation, here's the steps to take. I feel like is super vital with this breed. And again, isn't always a safeguard, even, in Bugatti's case, but will make a difference in this breed when they are faced with situations like that. So I wouldn't say is it possible for them to be stable enough on their own? Yes, with a lot of training. I would definitely not expect that out of a Corso from the get-go, though, for sure.
Yep, I agree with that, especially with how long it takes for them to mature and how many bits and pieces they go through as they're getting older and older. For a long period of time, Renee was looking super duper solid. She was doing great. But then, with the moving and all these other certain things that were happening, her behavior started to change, mainly because anxiety started to go up and all of these things. And we were running out of time to train these specific little moments. So her foundation had it, and she was doing really great handling stress, a lot to do with her breeder.
Yes.
She came in knowing how to handle stress really, really well. It was just kind of pushing her in that direction of, now how do I want her to handle these stresses?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is why I definitely, if people want to go through with having Corsos as their service dogs, specifically for anxiety, working really, really closely with trainers for every single stage, because of all these little fear stages, all like a door could all of a sudden be the scariest thing in the world.
No, seriously. Just this past, sorry to interrupt, just this past weekend, Bugatti, who has done, been going in and out of stores since she was like 5-ish months old. She's been doing this PA stuff. Decided this past weekend that sliding glass doors, like hardware stores or something, are now scary. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, cool. We're going to work on this. But exactly, that you brought up a really good point about the maturity, that they take a long time to mature. which means that they go through a lot of these, not even if it's just fear stages, but just growth stages where they're like, I feel like they're like peeling back another layer of like, oh, this is how I see reality. This is how I'm perceiving the world. That yes, it's super vital to be working with someone who's very comfortable working with a dog like that, who their fear response is a lot different typically than, or can be overwhelming for a handler, because it's much different than if a poodle is maybe scared of something or isn't sure of something. So I cut you off.
You're good. That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, they are stable enough to figure things out for themselves once they hit that stage. Once they're kind of leveled out, I feel like that they can really be solid in so many different situations. Right. It's how you handle all these moments between now and whenever they get there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, for sure. And yeah, exactly to that point. So we have another question. What are they typically reactive to? This is a good question because I feel like what they're typically reactive to are usually the same things that I've experienced with other breeds. I don't think it's so much a deal of what they're reactive to as more as it's because they're individual dogs, and individual dogs will have their own different levels of self-confidence, different levels of, even where they're at in training or just naturally, things that they like or dislike. I don't feel it's usually so much a concern of what they're typically reactive to as it's more how they're reactive. I think this question, and I'm double checking, I think this question also kind of dealt a little bit more with like prey drive, if they're reactive, to like, I guess prey drive, I know that's like different, but like maybe smaller animals or things like that. Again, I think that's more of a foundational thing. I could tell from Bugatti when I got her at a very young age that she was definitely had this interest. And so I took that and I honed it. And I was like, okay, so we're going to do work around small animals. And then we'll still play with toys and still work on a prey drive, but work on that on and off switch. To the point where, a couple months ago, she was finding baby quails in the backyard and bringing them to us and, super gentle. So, but she'll still run around and chase a toy and still do like, flirt pull work or something like that. So it's, again, different varying levels of that. But I don't think there's so much, at least when I think about it, so much of a one thing that they're typically reactive to versus another. You may have a different experience than I do, though.
I do feel like with Verena, if something was a little off, so we had a training facility, and if we moved something in the hallway and she didn't notice that we moved it and she saw it, she'd be like, wait a second. So if something isn't where it's supposed to be, she'll notice. But again, it's like all that foundation work. How do I want her to react to things that she's noticing and could potentially negatively react to?
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, definitely, strange things that are a little bit off. So sometimes I moved to a busier street. So now it's taken a little bit of a while for her to adjust to the fact that people actually walk by our house now.
Gotcha, yeah.
That wasn't something we had when we lived in Texas. It was really rural, but now that we're here somewhere way more busy, she's like, whoa, there are people that come pretty often. And let's take them a little bit of adjustment, but, making sure, set them up for success.
Yes, I saw that.
I want to make sure that, like, if I'm putting my dog, especially if I have a controlled environment, like my house or a training facility or somewhere I go regularly with her, kind of add that strange thing in where I know that I can handle it and she can, and I can control the situation if she's really uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But like you said, with, flirt pull and all that, I mean, Raina plays tug all the time. She'll chase the ball like it's crazy, but she's 50-50 about a cat. I did introduce her to her first cat a couple months ago. She was 50-50. I think eventually over time, she would really adjust to having a cat around, but all those different drives, I mean, like you said, they're on and off switches. Like she'll turn it on if she sees the tug. If she doesn't see it, she won't go chasing leaves. So it's really like dependent on what she sees and how our attitude is, even down to like what I'm wearing. She'll be like, oh, you're wearing a training vest, time to do this. So,
I got this, I know what happens.
Yeah, so they react, if you want to put react in that kind of way, they react to what, we want to do with them and have really good on and off switches, again, with the right foundation, right breeder, right, all that stuff.
You did bring up another good point, and I think too, this is me growing up with Mastiffs. I'm sort of like, oh, that's normal for them. So I'm glad you brought this up. That yes, definitely, especially in the house more so. Mastiffs do typically tend to be very. They're originally estate dogs, so they're very observant as far as if something is different or something's where it's not supposed to be. I even with Bugatti's a little bit more this way. Some of the previous dogs I've had have been very much so that way, where if we move something into a room or move furniture around, or if it's like dark out, it's dark in the house and we move something into a hallway, they're definitely the ones to, they may raise their hackles and go look at it, see what's going on. So not necessarily a vocal reactive, but more in a sense of, oh, there is something over here, I need to check this out. Where other dogs may be super unconcerned about it because it's their house. Right. But yeah. Mastiffs definitely in that way, I think in general are much more sensitive to changes in their environment, especially their usual environment, their territory, if you will.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whenever we let Raina out, she's always using the fence line, like no matter every single day. That's what got her skunked. So she's definitely.
You saw that too. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah. It was one of those. I'm sorry. A dog just came in. Yeah, we're good to go. Yeah.
So I'll go into the next question. Are there any inherent traits in molossers that are helpful for service dog work? Yes. They're definitely, they love having a job to do. And now I say that knowing most dogs love having a job to do. They're very good about, especially in PA, ignoring people typically and ignoring strangers. If you're out cruising and doing your thing, they're very good about, all right, cool, we're working, we're with a team, this is what it is. I can block out everything else around me. Big difference from a lot of poodles and even some Goldens that I've worked with, because they're very like, oh, there's a dog, I want to go say hi, or oh, there's people, I love people, or kids, I love kids. Bugatti's very much so like she's like one of those carriage horses with the blinkers on, just like, we're doing this, we're going here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
super familiar.
Yeah. So I think that can be very helpful with service dog work. It's sort of one less thing. I say one less thing to work on with them. However, that also comes with the trade-off of you have to make sure that they're comfortable enough to allow people to come up to you, especially in an emergency situation. Because sometimes they're so like, we're doing our thing, that they'll almost get like confused and upset. Like, why is this person interrupting us? Like, why, what are you doing here? Kind of mentality.
Yep. I agree with that too. Raina has been so easy to work in public. When we used to take her to the Pearl, if anyone's in San Antonio, it's like their farmers market on Saturdays and Sundays. It was fun. And we would take her and our Golden out, and our Golden would see anyone who makes eye contact with him, and he's like, hey, I love you. and we raised them together at the exact same time. My boyfriend trained with both, I trained with both, so they know how to work. But when we see them working kind of side by side, we do notice those differences. Exactly what you said, working with strangers in the sense of like a stranger can approach and it's okay. Is a big part of doing that. But I do feel like their inherent trait of basically wanting to work and go
yes,
is amazing for mobility. I think that we would do really great as mobility dogs, because a lot of mobility is like, let's just keep moving, or I need to hold you up, or I need to just make sure that you're not gonna, topple over, or kind of like fade away a little bit. So they are sensitive to that and really get on the job. And with mobility, you can't really have a dog that's like, oh, I'll get to you in 5 minutes. It's like, you need that exactly in that moment. So they really take off and are like, okay, I want to work with you right now. And like you said, blinders. I always use that with Raina. She's just like, when she's working, it's like, hello, like anyone, like you can throw like food at her and she's just like,
just so concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Bugatti's the same way about a lot of things. It's very, it kind of goes back to the whole, like, we'll be in places or somewhere and people like trying to interact with her and like, you know, be like, oh, kissy puppy. And literally, like, if they start getting up in her face, you know, usually depending upon where we're at and what we're doing, I'll usually try to tell people like, hey, can you give us some space? But if I'm in a situation where I'm not really able to do that, or the person's just really ignoring me, Bugatti will literally just lift her head up. And especially it's great when they're trying to take pictures of her. If you just lift her head up and she'll like look at me and she'll literally just maintain eye contact with me, like, Mom,
Oh, yeah.
all right, I'm not doing it. I'm blocking this person out. I don't know what they're doing, but Mom, are you going to take care of this situation?
Yeah, they're so good in that sense of like, hey, like I see this happening and you've trained me to do this and I'm doing it. Like they won't break it just because you've looked away or anything like that. They're like, okay, I'm doing what you wanted me to do.
Yeah, right. Do you ever feel that Raina has ever, like, she'll almost be like I don't want to say upset, but like just like disappointed almost when if other people are really being rude. Like, I'll give an example of I've had Bugatti was laying down at at like a pet expo thing that I was there for, a service dog group that I'm with, and I had a photographer come up, and I had no problem with them taking photos and stuff because it was for the event, but he started getting a little, he was just focusing, like, I think he was trying to get like the right angle for his photos, but it was to the point where he was being like very like invading Bugatti's space, and I asked him, I was like, okay, you know, leave us alone. And I even called her over to me and had her lay down actually behind me, and she did, no problem. And then he came back, I was busy talking to someone else, and I didn't realize he had come back over to us and around and was trying to take photos behind me of her.
Okay.
And she let out a little low growl and like looked at me, like wasn't even growling at him, but was like just like grumbling is what I call it.
Yeah.
And just looked at me like, Mom, he's not listening. Like, Mom, he's not doing this. Like, you feel, but it's very much so from a place of, not that she's like mean or like scared. It's more of like a place of like, he's not supposed to be doing that. I know he's not supposed to be doing that. You need to take care of the situation.
Yeah, I've seen Raina do that. For her, she'll like rest her chin on my leg or start pushing me.
Yes.
So if it's something that is making her uncomfortable, and I've tried to kind of accept that or like push whatever is making her uncomfortable away or making me uncomfortable, and that's still being persistent, then she'll just kind of be like, hello, or just start like nudging me and be like, get out of here. Like, this isn't a good situation.
Yes. Bugatti does the whole, she'll come up and like, if I'm sitting down, she'll come up with her leg and just put her chin like right here. Like stare super intensely, like, oh, okay.
There's that stare of like, hey.
Oh yeah.
I forgot to mention their working ability, being working group dogs, I think makes them awesome because they will train no matter how long or how far or where you want to go.
Yes.
It's like every single day they're down to do whatever you want to do.
Right.
So Raina doing so many things on top of when she was training, she would do dock diving, she would try an agility class, she would try all these other things and would never get bored of it.
Right.
And at the same time, sometimes when we overtrain certain commands, she would get bored of it. Exactly. So finding that balance and making sure that those are the things that you want and like kind of matching that to your lifestyle. If you want a dog that you're constantly like working with every single day who can keep up,
yes,
then that's really a good benefit
for sure. I think that's another, and this isn't so much on the questionnaire, but I'll bring this up because you kind of touched on it, was they're very good about when you bring up challenges to them, at least in my experience when I've been training dogs, they're great about if you have that bond with them and have set them up for success, they enjoy being challenged, typically much more so than other breeds.
Yes.
You know, typically when you introduce a shepherd or introduce a poodle to a new situation, a new scenario, an example that I love bringing up is a palate. It's like a wobbly palate. It's not that big of a deal to us humans, but to dogs, that's like a whole other world.
Oh yeah.
The difference that I found with molossers is that while usually I'll pick on poodles. Sorry, I've worked with a lot of poodles, so I can pick on them. With poodles is that you usually bring them up and they'll, you know, you introduce them, walk them around it, and then once you start working them on it, they freeze up or they'll back up immediately and they're kind of like, oh my gosh. And then you have to slowly be like, nope, and you lead them up to it. And it's this whole like almost like a dance. I like equating it to sort of a dance that you play with them. Where I found usually with Mastiffs is that they love more so the challenge, so they love the idea of it, so they'll jump like right on it, and not in the sense of like they're comfortable with it at first, but they'll love trying to figure it out and work on it, and they'll stay on as long as they can, and then they'll jump off. And then if you tell them we're going to try this again, they'll jump right back on, and then they might fail miserably, but they'll hop right back on it again and try it again and continue to try to get it like with full force.
Oh yeah. I've so Breda's breeder Petrero uses puppy culture. So I watched a couple of those like barrier challenges that she's done with like the puppies, where they'll put the food on one side and the puppy on another, and it's just a little short piece of an X bed, and the dogs would have to figure out how to, you know, get around that teeny tiny X bed as little like less than 8-week-old puppies to get to their food. So kind of like trying to stress them out a little bit, but not over stress them out. Or I don't exactly know how to explain that perfectly.
Just get them used to it and kind of desensitize them in that sort of way. Like
just challenging them, period, and seeing how they react to these different challenges. So I've seen that grow up in Raina. So anytime I give her a challenge, she's super duper persistent about getting to it and getting it right. So teaching her like touch pads, she like doesn't quit until she gets it exactly the way that I want it to. And even though I'm like done and on the couch, she'll just still stand on her touchpad and be like, we're still doing this right. So so it's definitely one of those nice traits that they have of just wanting to continue to do what you want them to do. I have seen with the Labs and Goldens I've worked with, they do give up a little bit earlier, or they are much more timid. They'll approach things, like you said, you'd have to dance around with them, kind of be like, let's look at it from this angle and at that angle and underneath it. Like, let me just show it to you, all these little ways. Whereas Raina would just be like, okay, I'm going.
Right. I feel like another very important difference to make is that molossers don't typically get as overloaded as easily. Now, that doesn't mean that they can go and go and go for longer. It just means they don't shut down as easily. I would argue that when they actually do shut down, they're done, and it's much harder to work them through something. Say if, you know, a poodle shut down, which obviously you don't ever want to push a dog to that point, but still I would also think, at least kind of when I'm thinking back to it, they typically don't shut down as easily due to the fact that they are a little bit more open to a challenge.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Commenter on here asked about how their energy level is and off switch around the house. I just wanted to clarify, we'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about sort of lifestyle and what it means to sort of live with the dog. Right now we're kind of going over inherent traits, but I just wanted to say that I see your comment and we'll get to that for sure. That will definitely be covered here. Moving on. A lot of these are going to be just some crossover for sure with the questions, but I just want to touch on them at least, you know, each one so that we can mention it. What is their protective instinct like, and is it difficult to redirect? This is a fun one. First and foremost, when you get any breed of dog, you have to research, one, what the creation of the breed was for, because it tells you a lot about the different drives of the dog, the different instincts of the dog, how the dog is built, how the dog will think, you know, what the dog's typically going to excel at and what they're not going to excel at. To be honest, at least in my opinion, most molossers are super not ideal inherently for service work. Reason being is typically they were bred to sort of be estate dogs, so they were bred to go out, patrol the estate alone, independently usually, and deal with situations as they saw it arise. Service dogs are usually quite the opposite. They have to be with us, they have to hang out with us all the time, they have to take orders from us, and, you know, and work with us and be intuitive with us, and that's quite frankly very or it goes against really just the core of their breeding and the core of what they were even created to do in the first place. So they do, I say they do, I've met obviously, and I'm sure the followers and people's watching this have met many Mastiffs that probably don't have a protective bone in their body. They're everybody's friend. But typically, if you get usually a well-bred dog, especially a Corso, they're definitely going to have a protection instinct, to that level. They're going to want to have that desire to say, hey, I see something here, something's in my house. I'm not really okay with this. I need to go investigate. And I need to make sure, first and foremost, that this isn't something that's going to be harmful to the environment or harmful to me or to my pack. How difficult is it to redirect? I think it depends, one, on the handler and your experience, how experienced you are, how comfortable you are. Because, I mean, honestly, even with Bugatti here in the beginning of the video, when she heard something outside, or I think it was more my voice saying hi, she thought somebody was here, a loud bark from a dog, or if we're out working with something and she sees something and she grumbles. For a lot of handlers, that might terrify you, and that's totally fine. That's not a typical response or something that you're used to seeing in a dog, or maybe you've been conditioned to think like, oh my gosh, that means aggression, or oh my gosh, this is going to get really bad, my dog's about to bite something. Yeah. So in reality, this is not the case at all, especially in this context with these dogs. I'm not saying they'll never be the situation, but in this context, it certainly isn't. I think a lot of it depends on your ability as a handler to recognize that and work through it and know how to handle a dog in that situation. And then it also depends on the individual dog. Some dogs are a lot more hardcore. This is who I am. This is my personality. And others, like Bugatti's, a lot more like, oh, okay, mom. All right, if you got it, I'll go take off and do my own thing. So I wouldn't say it's something that's super inherently difficult to redirect. I'd say it's just like with any other instinct. So if you have a herding breed, a rough collie, I'm gonna pick on you, Gabby. I know you're watching. If you have like a rough collie, herding instinct's gonna be huge. If you have, maybe if you're working with a terrier, that prey drive is gonna be huge as well. I would say it's pretty much the same as any other drive or any other inherent dog instinct. It really depends on the intensity level of that dog and your ability or really your experience, your know-how of how to work with that dog and work that dog through that situation. I know it's not like a solid answer, but that's really the best answer that at least I can give.
I think that actually hits the nail on it, because in our house, since I guess we have different situations in the sense that we lived, there's just my boyfriend and me in Texas for a long time. Right. And now we live in a really busy household where my brother and my parents are all here and everyone's going in and out of the doors, and it's like people we don't even know are coming in. Like nobody rings the doorbell at my house. People kind of just come in. Right. So that's been a big change for Raina. I do agree with you 100% that it is how you handle it. Like there's always this thing about dog training. It's like, when you yell at your dogs when they're barking because somebody came in, you're barking with them. It's not really adding on. It's not going to help them understand what you're supposed to do. But for some handlers, it's really hard to also control that while your dog is upset. So, so sometimes, just having with her, she's gotten to the point now where she just doesn't bark if somebody comes in the door. She'll obviously go investigate and like crotch punch them usually, and then come back and go to her bed and do whatever she was doing. So in terms of protective instinct, she wants to know like what's happening everywhere she is, but it was really hard for her in the beginning because we are playing against their instincts. Anytime we play against their instincts for any breed, I mean, it's like telling a retriever not to go get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Really hard for them.
Right.
It's hard for anything. I mean, my Shih Tzu sometimes, he has a little bit of separation anxiety. So I'm like, okay, you can't cuddle with me. And he's like, what do you mean? So
he's like,
fighting all of these instincts for them is really hard. So depending on your lifestyle, if you like that kind of stuff, in the home, obviously it's acceptable, but differentiating when you're in public and when you're at home can also be something to teach your dog that could be difficult to transfer. It all depends on how consistent you are.
Exactly. And, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm, looking into Corsos for this reason and this reason. And that's usually one of the first questions I try to ask people is, oh, how much experience have you had with this breed or with Mastiffs in general? Before I got Bugatti, I grew up with Mastiff breeds and Labs. Now, granted, I had experience training a wide variety of other breeds, but that was what I grew up with, which are kind of like Labs are usually your go-to breed for service work. You know, and then Mastiffs, which are usually not. And I loved working with these dogs. I really understand how to kind of interact with them. Really, I know my lifestyle fits them much better than, like, for example, a shepherd would. Not bagging on shepherds, but just at least if I'm going to have this dog in my home 24/7 and use them for working with other dogs, my clients' dogs, I knew this is the mentality, the temperament, and the personality type that I wanted.
Exactly.
That I'm comfortable with. And that's first and foremost, other than the other things that, you know, below what was necessary. So put all those up there first. The next step was, what am I used to? What am I comfortable with? What's going to be successful for me? And that was what led me to getting a dog. Like Bugatti wasn't so much, oh, I wanted a big scary dog, or, oh, I love this breed so much, or, oh, you know, I don't know, whatever reason, you know, other people they have. It was just, for me, it was, I know this breed. Well, not so much the breed, but more, you know, this type of dog. I've worked with them. I'm most comfortable with this type of dog, versus if I'm going to, you know, start doing this service dog work, which I had never done before I had gotten Bugatti. You know, you can research as much as you can, but the hands-on actually doing it yourself and learning it and being able to apply it to your life, I knew that if I was going to start that journey with any type of dog, I wanted to do it with a dog that I was going to be absolutely the most comfortable with. And that was a dog like this, which is why I have Bugatti. So I think that's definitely kind of along that point, just sort of adding my personal anecdote into that of what you were saying exactly, that it really comes down to your lifestyle and what you really truly are comfortable with and what you can handle. And that's, you have to be honest with yourself. What are you capable of handling and working with and training with?
Yep, definitely those things.
Let's see. So somebody else asked, define their energy level. I will be totally honest with this. I have seen, especially with Corsos, I've seen every, and there's Raina doing fantastic. I think Bugatti's put up, but yes. I feel like for me, so, okay, first and foremost, I've seen, as far as Corsos are concerned, I've seen every end of the spectrum. Some are very, and it really comes back to the lines and what breeder you go with and how you set them up. But I've seen super lazy, just, you know, basically living teddy bears that love to hang around, couch potatoes. And then there's dogs like Bugatti, and I'm assuming like Raina too, where they're just like, okay, let's do this. Let's go. Let's work. Bugatti is definitely on that end where she's first and foremost a working dog. She's, you know, she can not be off duty and be a pet and stuff like that, but she is definitely a working dog. I'm glad she didn't necessarily go to like a family where maybe they're just more chill or they like to hang out all the time, because she needs a job and she needs something to mentally challenge her. This breed, Corso specifically, you know, they're called the Ferrari of the Mastiff world, or Mastiff breeds, and I think she at least fits well into that because they are the more sportier version. They are supposed to be a little bit more agile than other Mastiff breeds. They are supposed to be able to, you know, have a little bit more energy, a little bit more drive to work than even, you know, more of the common Mastiff breeds at least. I'm curious what your take on that is.
Well, if Raina loves doing it, she'll do it for hours. So we took Raina up with our friend to Bucks Lake. She's in here somewhere, Rachel. And we went up to Bucks Lake in California, and Raina was swimming for about 5 hours straight.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
She feels like doing it, she'll do it for as long as it takes, and taking her out of the water will be impossible.
It's just what she wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. If that's what she wants to do. If we played fetch at our old place, we'd play, you know, for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And come in and be cool. We'd go for walks here and there, come in and be cool. She's not really a breed, or she's not really the dog. And this is all obviously independent. So like you said, there are Corsos on one end of the scale who are just like, go, 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 go. Right. And then there are others on the other set end that are a little more like chill. But and what I have come to realize is a lot of them have that good on and off switch. So Raina isn't going to be standing in front of the door going, we're going to the lake every single day.
Exactly.
She's going to put it together that that's not a daily habit. She obviously just likes to sleep most of the day. We're not doing that. But if it's been about 2 or 3 days of not doing much, you can see her get stir crazy.
She'll start and Bugatti's very much so the same way. When I was getting when I had laryngitis, the whole virus thing, like a week or two ago, whenever that was, you know, if I'm sick and I'm really run down or I'm not able to do something, yeah, the first day or two she's like, all right, I can chill out all day, that's fine. And then yeah, by day 3-ish, she's like, okay, we need to do something. So it's treadmill time, or you know, whatever else I'm able to do with her to take her out, train her, even mind games around the house, stuff like that. They're, I think, yeah, very much so a breed that really needs a job, for sure.
They need to do something. Something at
the very least. I think that's a pretty good answer. Next question, are they more food driven, toy driven, or praise driven as a whole? I truthfully might answer this. I know. I honestly feel in this regard, when it comes to when you're talking, because this isn't so, I mean, it's drives, yes, but it's more reward based. And I think that's really more on a personal level. I do think certain breeds tend to usually have more of a preference. And see, every Mastiff that I own has been totally different. Like Bugatti is completely toy driven. Another Mastiff I ever was completely praise driven. Like she wouldn't work for treats or toys. And then yet another one was only food motivated. So I want to say, I feel like they're usually lesser on the praise driven scale. Usually they like to do more toy work, but then again, I don't know how much of that is more, that's just what I've been seeing recently, or versus how much is the actual breed.
That's a hard question.
Yeah, I feel like it's more of an individual thing, but maybe you might have a different experience.
What I find is she likes whatever I like. So if I feel like we're gonna train with a ball today, then she's down for that. If I feel like we're gonna train with a tug today, then she's down for that. And if it's gonna be treats, then she'll do that. So it's whatever I kind of put that value into, then she'll work for it.
Right.
But that took a lot of time to get there. I remember the very first day I worked her on treats, and then we switched to ball, and then we switched to tug, and then back to ball, and then treats. So we went in the full circle of everything in that one training period, and it was like the best thing in the world, because I'm like, wow, you work equally for everything. So it was one of those days you realize that it's like, it's not necessarily the thing that's motivating her, it's that she's feeling that I'm happy that she's doing whatever I want. It's like, yes, you could put praise driven in there somewhere, but as like an underlying theme. But I think it's just whatever, as long as your energy is up for it and like, you know, good and happy and showing her, you know, all those things that she's doing is correct, she'll just keep going. So pray, exactly. Whatever you put value on, she'll put that same value on, or they'll put that value on.
Sorry. I know, and I think that's a good point too, just as a handler in general, is that it really comes down to what you value, or what reward you place in training on your dog. Some dogs may have more of a preference over another, but I think that's a good point of really developing that just desire to work, but desire to please us, desire to, you know, want to basically do the best job they absolutely can. Which is something that you need, especially in a service dog. You need a dog that's happy to work, that's, you know, excited to go do this or train this or be in this kind of area and listen to you or focus on you. Yeah, for sure.
That's like the biggest part. Yeah, as long as you have some sort of handler connection. I mean, back to that first question of how well they connect to handlers, I guess that does kind of go into their praise. It's like, as long as you're making sure that they know that you're expressing to them that whatever they're doing is correct, whatever you use to reward them in that sense, whether it's food, whether it's toy, whether it's getting to chase after something, then, I mean, they'll do whatever you want.
Right, yeah. No, for sure. Gabby, I see your questions in there, so we'll get to that. The herder question we'll get to here in a little bit when we talk about Corsos versus other breeds. We're about to go into that now, so I'll touch on. I see your guys' questions, and we'll touch on them I'm just placing them in kind of where we're going to be discussing it in like the categories that I have on this sheet I created. So the next one that we'll kind of go into as well is, as I mentioned, Cane Corso versus other breeds. So we had a lot of questions concerning how do Corsos compare to like Presas, or how do they compare to Shepherds, or even as Gabby pointed, you know, how if you're going from a herder to a molosser, what are kind of some things to look at? The first one is, how do their drives and stamina compare to other Mastiff breeds? This one would have, if to fully answer it, would really be a long answer. The reason for that is that Mastiff breeds kind of cover the whole spectrum. You have dogs like English Mastiffs or Bull Mastiffs, which have a very big difference between Corsos or, you know, a Dogo Argentinos.
Yeah.
You know, they're very, while they have similar instincts, they have very different drives, very different stamina. I would say in general, Corsos are a little bit more driven to work, which is great for service dog work. They love to have a job and fulfill the job. And on the stamina level, they typically tend to have better stamina, better agility than other breeds, purely just because they were created to be that way. They were meant to be this more sport version of the other Mastiffs. Doesn't mean that other Mastiff breeds shouldn't be able to do work or shouldn't be somewhat athletic, but it just means that Corsos were meant to be able to really be a coursing Mastiff in a sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that, Lindsey, or
I just remember Raina's great grandma that I worked with at the Shore Hospital, Missy. Felt like she was on here. Missy was extremely on that higher end of like, I love to run and run for everything all day long, and I got all like choppy for
you get a connection issue.
So she was on that other spectrum of her other side, where she was just like, I want to run, and she was a coursing dog, and she did really great doing all those things. And then you have the other end, where I've seen where they just like to lay around and hang out all day, and if somebody comes, they're like, hey, who are you? Okay, we're good. And then that's it.
So it's like they lift their head up from the couch, like, okay,
Yeah.
I was before, fine, whatever, come on in.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it really does compare pretty vastly for every single Mastiff working group, even in there. In terms of working stamina, as in like out in public, I think that they have a good working stamina. Raina isn't great in the heat, as Bugatti probably is.
Oh, we'll still breed either. It's that, I think, just the brachy skull, but as well as I think as well that they're dark colored breeds. You know, Bugatti's like black, so it kills her in the heat. So, you know, I think there's a lot of conditioning you can do, but as far as like, you know, if she were more like maybe a shepherd or something, that probably is much better stamina. They don't do well for prolonged in the heat, especially if you haven't done any conditioning for that. I mean like hardcore conditioning specifically for that. I just wanted to, somebody asked if the live is going to be saved for later. Yes. To anyone watching this live, I'm having it recorded, and then I'll be putting it up either later today or probably tomorrow sometime this weekend. It will be put up. I'll have it saved once so you guys can watch it later, but I'll also save it for future use for as an Instagram TV. And Lindsey, if you want that too, I can also send that off to you so you can put that in your profile as well. So that you guys can, if you need to go at any point or anything like that, you feel free to look for that later, because we will be saving this for future use. Let's see. Next question. Compared to a Bull Mastiff, how do they react in a fear stage? Hi Cleo. So I know that the main breed that I grew up with was Bull Mastiffs. They are my heart breed. I love them. I will definitely be owning a Bull Mastiff again in the future. I felt that, and I would have actually gotten a Bull Mastiff. When I was looking around for breeders and dogs at the time, I didn't feel like I found the right Bull Mastiff or kind of the right lines for specifically what I wanted for service dog work. You know, I think that there's there's good differences in both the breeds. Do I think well, I guess I'll just say I think Corsos are typically a little bit more better suited for service dog work right now as the breed is right now. I know there's some revival efforts. I think Project Guerrero Bull Mastiff is another one of the breeders that I've been following who's trying to make them kind of back to more of a working dog rather than a little bit more of kind of lay around the house type of dog, sort of like a different version of a Corso in a sense. Mm-hmm. As far as how do they react in a fear stage, again, I think it really, they're always going to have that protective instinct, but it's going to be how they express that can be very different. My Bull Mastiffs tended to be a little bit more on the like fearful side rather than kind of the stand your ground. Bugatti's very much so more of a stand your ground, let's go see what this is, where my other Bull Mastiffs are usually more, we'll see this from a distance and kind of like, rather than take the initiative upon themselves to go see what it is, they'll kind of look around for us and be like, hey, what's that? I'm going to hang out from over here and I'll let you go figure it out. You know, but as far as like in a fear stage, I would say there's really not that much difference as far as from Corsos. You know, relatively old dogs go through different fear stages, and what that looks like for each individual dog is going to be different from one to the next. Yeah. But they are, at that core, they do have that same protective instinct, or that same estate dog mentality of, all right, this is it, what is going on? They have that need to sort of assess the situation rather than immediately react in a way that they immediately react in like a survival mode way. I guess I'll put it that way. At least it's been my experience. I don't know if you've had much experience with Bull Mastiffs, or if you had anything you wanted to add on that.
Not specifically with Bull Mastiffs. Actually, most of the dogs I've owned in the past were like shepherd type dogs. I had a Sheltie, a German Shepherd, my Shih Tzu. That's not a shepherd. And now Raina. The honorary. And now Raina. So she actually is my first Mastiff type breed. So it is very different seeing how her fear stages were versus my shepherds versus the Goldens I used to work with at work and the labs I used to work with. Hers took me a really long time to actually figure out. So I remember sending a couple of videos to her breeders saying, is this normal? Like, is this how she's supposed to do this? Because I'm not really sure that, like, I don't know what she wants. And so it does look very different. So if you have never owned a Mastiff before and have never seen that kind of fear stage or how they respond to fear, then definitely working close with your breeder is a big part of it.
Yes.
Finding a trainer who knows Mastiffs all across the board, I'm just going to generalize them because they are all kind of stemmed from that same purpose. They'll all, you know, kind of see whatever that is and be like, oh, should I look to you? Should I go handle it? They'll do that kind of consistently across the breeds as I've experienced before. At least working at big pairs as well. A lot of the Mastiff type breeds in there all kind of had that same gist, but they were always misunderstood for their fear periods. And I think that that is one of the biggest things to take note of when you're raising a Corso or a Mastiff in general, not even just for service dog, just overall, because that one thing that happens during a fear period could just kind of collapse, which is
vital.
Kind of what happened to us when she got attacked several times in Texas.
Yep.
So that does like hold in their ground with her, and now she's kind of in the things, but it's a work in progress. So it's not like, you know, when something bad happens during a fear stage, it's all over. It's something that you just need to really work with somebody on no matter what, especially because if you're going for a Mastiff breed period, they are all going to be big.
Yes. Oh yeah.
No matter which one you pick. I'm trying to think of a small Mastiff, but I feel like Raina is probably the smallest.
Right.
Usually when we're in the group ring, I'm like, am I all the way in the end next to like the schnauzers? Like, really? I really realized we were always that small compared to all the working dogs.
Exactly. Right.
But, yeah, it's kind of just keep in mind that, you know, what they were bred for and that their fear stage reactions may not be what most people are used to seeing.
Exactly. Right. You did mention that you came from working with shepherds mostly, and then working with a mastiff. I know that one of our followers had mentioned or previously asked on here about working with herding breeds and then going to molossers. And I would love for you, if you wanted to talk maybe a little bit kind of about that experience and kind of some of the key points that you would like to express to other people who are maybe in a kind of a similar position, who maybe worked with shepherds or other herding breeds, and are looking at transitioning into working with a molosser.
So I guess a disclaimer is my shepherd that I had while I was living in the Philippines was what you could call a show line shepherd,
Okay.
who was a lot more subdued than what you would think a working shepherd would be. So he was a lot more relaxed about everything.
Gotcha.
So I guess I wouldn't have the best answer in that sense, but one thing I did notice is movement always caught his eye, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was my chickens that were moving, he would be like, oh, they're over there.
Yeah.
You know, I think I need to bring them back. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, his instincts were still kind of there, even though he was like, I guess what you could call, again, that show line shepherd.
Right.
I like to say that mainly because when I was living in the Philippines, they were very separated there, more so than they are here. Like, they are way more completely separate breeds
Interesting.
out there, which is, yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Exactly. But moving from that to me expecting that from Raina, but not really happening, was a happy surprise. So I would be like, oh, you know, you might go chase some stuff because, you know, Corsos do herd here and there also. And
Yeah.
her grandmother, I think, works on a farm somewhere, working with cattle. So I was like, oh, I should expect this happening, but it doesn't really pop up as much. What I do notice is that she's more like, oh, hey, the group is over here. Like, let me go to the group instead of let me bring them to you. So when we had, you know, 5 or 6 dogs at the training center, she'd go with them and then like make sure that they're all okay and leave me alone.
Oh yeah.
But then eventually bring them back and be like, hey, they're all here. Like, we're good. So that's really a really different kind of way that she would be versus a shepherd. In terms of working in public, my shepherd in Manila, I lived in a really big city. He was solid in the city. Raina is solid in a city, so I don't see too much of a difference in, you know, those things unless you haven't prepared for them as puppies. Although he did go on and on and on and on, and even when we were done working or done out on a trip, he would be like, "Okay, let's go throw the ball." Like,
right.
Like, let's
the off switch was different versus working with Raina versus your other shepherd.
Exactly. Yeah, the off switch with Raina is pretty easy. Like, once her collars come off, everything comes off. She just goes to her bed, takes a nap, goes to her sunspot, sunbathes. It's like,
oh yeah.
She knows when it's like, okay, we're good. I can relax.
Right.
But yeah, that was a little bit more of a problem. I wouldn't call it a problem because he wasn't training to be a service dog back then, but it was something that it was hard to keep up with. Granted, age, I was like way younger and all these things, but yeah, I think again, just looking into it a little bit more, getting more hands-on experience working with separate breeds like that, especially during fear stages specifically.
Yes, for sure.
It's how you can really tell if that dog is something you can handle in the future or not.
Hello, sorry about that. I was just say I just want to make sure that we're keeping up with everything because I've been on for an hour and then all of a sudden it like kicked out. So I'm like, oh, okay, alrighty.
So it's telling us like you guys are on for an hour after we mentioned it.
So I was just gonna say I'm gonna just not skip over some questions, but just I'll look at the questions that we've kind of touched on already and just kind of go over those. Can you time out of the live? Gabby said that you can time out of the live. I did not know that was an option, but oh well.
I didn't know that either.
Well, we're learning things.
Good to know.
Let's see. We kind of touched on a couple different things. I think we touched a lot on the fear periods, of course, kind of with other, I'll retriever breeds typically and other mastiffs as well. Let's talk a little bit about lifestyle and training for these dogs. What type of lifestyle would not mesh well with the Corso? I think that's a good one to get into with, first off, when people are looking at kind of what are some red flags as far as whether this breed is a good fit for me or not. I think what kind of lifestyle would not mesh with a Corso? Well, one, one right off the bat to me would be somebody who I think is either a lot more of a homebody, in the sense that, you know, if you typically are just home all the time, aren't super active, aren't super motivated to go out and train, like you'll do the work and you'll put in what's needed for your dog. But then otherwise, if, you know, you're not the kind of person who maybe would look into like dog sports or other kind of things to help kind of enrich your dog mentally, which is totally fine. There are a lot of breeds that are perfect for that lifestyle. I would say Corso would probably definitely not be for you, just because they do like having a job and they do like having something to go to. And again, kind of we were talking earlier, you know, after a couple days, they're like, okay, we need to go do something. We need to, you know, have this funnel into which we can direct our energy and our focus into. I think another one would probably be somebody who, I'll use service dog handlers in general, because I think usually most of the people that are looking at this are going to be considering one for service dog work. I would say usually if you struggle with social anxiety is really a big one. Not so much because if you do have social anxiety, you won't be able to work a Corso, but more so in the sense that it might be more difficult for you, because that's typically where at least one of our biggest, you know, Bugatti Minds issues are working through, or that we've had to put a lot of effort into, is working in a crowd. Because again, anytime that I start feeling the sense of, you know, okay, I really don't like that person, I want to stay away from the person, she'll feel the same way and be like, okay, you know, we want to keep that person away.
Yeah.
And if you are to a point where it's, you know, really affecting you, where maybe you might shut down, if you don't have a dog that is more solid in the regard where they know how to interact and they know the correct choices to make in that situation, a Corso is likely going to want to help you, but in the way of, I'm going to keep this person away from you, and I'm not going to let this person come to you, and I'm not going to, like, they're going to put limits on what other people can and can't do, and that's really typically not good behavior for a service dog, or not good behavior, but just not ideal behavior for a service dog. I know a lot of people especially struggle with, you know, different forms of anxiety, and, you know, I deal with anxiety, and that's one of the things Bugatti can help me with, but mine isn't usually in a social setting, or usually isn't, I want to say trigger, but usually isn't brought on by usually human interactions or other people interactions, which makes her a good fit for me. I don't know if you have any others that you can think of that maybe are like red flags for people.
There are a few I can think of. I mean, from my background, again, going back to what I know, I've always trained for PTSD and mobility. Right. So I've noticed that Raina did take to a lot of people, when I brought her to work, she took to people with PTSD well. She really wanted to like work with them, but to get them to give cues or commands was hard, because she would question it with a little bit of questioning in your own voice. If you're not firm enough to give that command and you're questioning yourself, she would question you back. So she'll be like, well, do you really mean that? Because you kind of added a question mark to that. So I don't know.
Shower dogs for sure.
Exactly. But they want it to be a firm and clear command. So, and back to training, sometimes if you are in a situation where you're not comfortable saying something in that moment, that's kind of so mine is more of a social anxiety. So if I'm in public and I'm a little more like, okay, we're going to stop, like, she's not going to take me seriously. I would have to, you know, bring myself up to that point, and in a way helps train me to kind of be a different person in that sense. But it is a downfall in having to train the dog in that sense. So it's kind of, it's a good and bad thing. Good for me, maybe not so great for her. So yeah, keeping those things in mind. I mean, they're great. I think for lifestyle, they would be great mobility dogs. Again, going back to what we said, you know, they want to work. For momentum, pulling was really good for Raina. She liked that. She thought that was like the best thing in the world. She's like, let me get you out of this situation. And she was like, cool, we did it. Yay. occasionally in the house we're like, okay, we're gonna get this and bring it to somebody else, and that would make her day like, yay, like 10,
Yeah.
10 times better because we had her do something. So yeah, exactly what you said. Someone who is willing to put some effort into working their dog every day, whether it's like, training for food, for, their meals, or anything more than just a walk, I would say is ideal. Just anything separate than what you would imagine a day to be. And it's not realistic to expect everybody to do that. And I do want to share Corsos with everyone as much as possible. But
Right.
they are great dogs, but you do really need to make sure that they're taken care of in their sense. So like if they need to work, once that's covered, then they can take care of you, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that once we moved and all we did were just walks, she was kind of like, okay, this is getting boring. Like,
Right.
let's get back to work.
Does that need that challenge?
Yeah. So, nose work. I mean, just giving them something different. I've been seeing this girl on Instagram and Facebook who does dog dancing with her Corso, and I really like it.
Very cool. You need to send me the info. I don't know who you're talking about. That sounds like
I'll go find them because she just does a lot of good dog dancing, and it is something different than Corsos know, but it's that accepting the challenge part. So maybe, and I like this about Corsos, is that they may not be the best herders or the best of this or the best of that, but they can do whatever you want them to do. And I think that makes them really great. Like that versatileness is just like, versatileness, is that a word?
Versatility?
Versatility, thank you. The versatility makes them really good in that sense, but some of that protectiveness is that part where, to be cautious of if you are looking at a service dog.
Right. That was one of the good things about Corsos, and you really hit the nail on the head with that in the regard where, and that's been my experience with Bugatti as well. She's not like super stellar amazing at like one thing. She has fun with everything we've tried, whether it's from trying to do dock diving or scent work or rally or the trick dog stuff or even dabbling in obedience. She doesn't like super excel, knock the ball out of the park in anything, like one thing particular, but she has a blast doing everything. And you have a dog that you can kind of dabble in everything with.
It's really cool.
Yes. Along with that, though, I would say not only is it fun for her, but there's sort of a need for her to have that, to have not so much of a right, but just to be able to do these different things. So again, it kind of goes back to, if that's not something that you're willing to put into a dog that may need that, then this may not be the right breed for you. But if you are looking for a dog that, hey, kind of like me, like I had never, before I got Bugatti, I had never participated in any of the AKC sports. I had never tried really any kind of stuff other than just your basic dog obedience, behavioral work, that kind of thing. Just setting up dogs to be awesome family dogs. And it's been fantastic to have her because I've been able to dabble in this and play around with these different things and get a feel for how the sports are and how to kind of, train a dog in these various avenues. And she's afforded me the ability to do that. And that's something that I really wanted and something that I was drawn into by Corsos, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but yeah.
That is exactly why I went with Corsos too, because they can do everything. So, I mean, it was weird at our agility class because people, like somebody actually quit our agility class because they were scared of her. Weird and sad all at the same time. But yeah, they quit our agility class because they were scared of her, but she did great during the agility class. She doesn't, Corsos aren't usually taken to water really well, but, we worked with our trainer at Canine Waterworld in Texas, and she absolutely loves it now. Like there's no getting her out of water. And now that we live by a beach, it's like, yay.
That's Bugatti, 100%.
Yeah. So it does give me that opportunity as well. I mean, I played around in agility before with Shepherd and my Shih Tzu, but never. And again, with Raina, it's not like highly competitive right now for us. It's mainly just in conformation. That's really, I wouldn't say competitive, but it's fun. So that gets her out of the house and has her working for something, and in that busy environment is a challenge for her as it is. So anything mentally challenging, anything physically challenging, I think those those types of lifestyles, and we're still on that lifestyle.
Exactly, right.
Those lifestyles, because it is a really big point to emphasize, because you can't really just get a dog just because you like how it looks. You
Yeah.
really have to make sure that it matches your lifestyle or what you want out of the dog.
Absolutely.
Yep.
No, I think that's perfect. All right, let me look at some of my other questions that we have here. We're touching on a lot of this stuff. Another good one, I think, is name the biggest challenges of puppyhood with a Corso. And I think this one kind of coincides with are they difficult to train. I feel like I have a different answer if you're looking at whether this is going to be a pet dog versus a service dog or going into kind of service dog work. I think the biggest challenge with puppyhood is usually with Mastiffs in general is that they're not like the most easy to train if you want something like, oh, let's go do these tricks or they're usually not the most easiest to motivate to do this kind of work. They're usually a bit more like, hey, we're just going to hang out around the house. And that's great for them, for his puppies. So I would say learning to kind of, as you did with Raina, learning to motivate her through a variety of avenues is super vital to kind of raising a well-rounded Mastiff. And then I would say just, again, besides the protective instincts, I would say another challenge when doing this is really, these are dogs that will go the extra mile. And if you say jump to the moon, they'll jump to the moon, but they have to have that faith in you. They have to have that trust in you that after they jump to the moon, that you're going to catch them when they come back down. And it's really awesome because if you have that with a dog, you can basically try anything with them. And as long as you maintain that trust with them, they'll respect the heck out of you and they'll do whatever you ask them to do. But on the other end of that, if something does happen, even if it's not your fault, but the dog, not being the same rational being we are, doesn't understand that, and that trust is broken, it can be very difficult and take a lot of work to try to regain that in your dog as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Once that trust is broken, for whatever reason it may be, whether it's an accident, most of the time it's an accident. Like, Raina's been attacked by a dog that was off leash. She, sulks. She sulks and she thinks it's like like you said, she doesn't understand that wasn't our fault as people, but she really just took it super hard and holds that grudge. I think from what I know, she and maybe most other Corsos just hold grudge. So
I agree with that.
If that experience wasn't the best, then there's a lot to work on.
Yes.
It's not like it's a grudge that will, be there forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, but they are a persistent breed. So you do have to make sure that you're prepared to work with that consistently every single day, every time. Like anytime we see an off-leash dog, now we have to be more protective of her to show her, you can still trust us in these situations.
Exactly. And I wonder if that too stems from them being just a breed that generally has a higher ego. And I say that ego meaning the self-confidence with the dog.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's molossers in general, but especially with Corsos, they typically have high egos. They, that's why challenges are so fun for them, because they love to be challenged. They love to be like, yeah, I can do this, but again, when that's broken, when their ego's been bruised, they take it very, very hard.
They take it hard.
Gotti, and even her issue is small dogs. And again, not that I say issue as in it's, a minute thing that we're working on, where she's been attacked by so many small dogs that, or lunged at, or just, and you see them in just places they're not supposed to be because people are more willing to take their small dogs out. And so we'll go around a corner and there's a small dog that tries to snap at her face. It's to the point where if we're out in and she perceives us to be working, if she's not working, if we're just on a walk, she doesn't care because she's seen that. But if she perceives us to be working, and so if we're in PA and she sees a small dog out there, even if we're not in a store or somewhere where even if we are somewhere pet friendly, she'll get you can tell she starts getting what's going to happen? Like, I don't know. And she doesn't want to be in that situation. And so much of having to go back from square one and be like, okay, we're going to turn this into a challenge, a fun challenge. Here's how we can help boost your ego. Here's how we can, help you to be more confident in yourself. At least there's that trust in me, but now we want to try to transfer that trust into she's stable and can just work through it. And she's come a long way, but it's something that as, again, a Corso handler, you have to realize that when this happens, when you have an issue like this, it's probably going to last for a long time. Even you can chip away in it and you can find success with it. And in Bugatti's case, it's not going to severely affect her work, at least how it is now. It's not going to severely affect her work or make her unable to work or make her reactive or aggressive or anything like that. But it is something that I'm always having to be cognizant of, something I'm always having to be on top of with her.
As a handler. I mean,
yes, exactly.
So many other things we worry about that
you
don't want to add. Is there going to be a dog in the corner, or is there going to be this or that? So I think that you touched on a good point about confidence. Like with Raina, all we ever did was confidence building as a puppy. I mean, I would rather confidence build her than train her a new command, because I think that was way more important. I can teach her how to sit like when she's 5, for example, but to teach her confidence at 5 is a lot harder, because they do set in their ways once they get to that age.
Absolutely.
You do need to be a little bit more of a calm, and I would use the word assertive in this situation, but a little more assertive, but also calm as a handler. And it can be hard when you do have a social anxiety or anxiety in general, because you can't control that at every single moment of the day, and then that's when the dog questions you. So so being able that is a huge training challenge for us, because sometimes confidence does fall off the grid, or isn't the first thing that's on my mind when I'm working with her, and she knows it. So if I'm not confident about something, she's not going to be confident about something.
Exactly.
Even though I've trained her on so many confidence, like obstacles, everything that she can do, if I'm not feeling it, she's not feeling it. So I guess going back to how they connect, they connect really well.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure in that regard. Let's see. I think the last section that we have is service dog work. I know we've covered that a lot throughout this live kind of ongoing and off. Let's see, what's the most difficult part about service dog work with molossers? I think it's kind of basically the same issues we were just saying, from their protective instinct to the way that you approach fear periods to their confidence building. I think I think those are the 3 kind of main things. If you have anything else to add, but I think we've kind of touched on that. It's the same thing, whether it's for a pet or for service dog work. It's really just those persisting issues about the origin of the breed that carries over into today.
I think that, and this is a little bit more external, but with getting a service dog at all, like whenever we were with work and talking to potential clients and all that stuff, you just have to be prepared that people are one of your biggest, like people in public will be one of the hardest things about owning a service dog, period. So we would always prepare people, like people will point, people will stare. Having a breed like a Corso, a well-bred, a gorgeous dog, people will definitely point and stare.
Oh, yes.
It amplifies that a million times. You'll get people trying to tell you it's a Cane Corso, or people will try to tell you, you have a pit bull mix, and, you have to kind of control your emotions in that case, and because you are representing service dog handlers.
Exactly.
I understand that some people will get upset, and it is hard to control it. And I can be sympathetic to people who eventually lash out at public, because it does really get on our nerves.
Right.
I think that as much as possible when I was working, I would try to tell people, just let them be. Like, even if the dog is gorgeous, like,
they're going to do what they're going to do, and there's nothing you can do that's going to change their mind or stop them from feeling the need to call out whatever it may be, from the fact that you chop the dog's ears off and the dog must be a pit fighter to, whatever else it may be. The dog has to be a vicious pit bull, or, or they're so cute and you just want to cuddle them, and, oh, you poor thing, you're working. Like, people are going to be people regardless.
So across every single breed. I mean, you'll get that on every single dog, no matter where you are in public.
Exactly.
With Corsos, you will get people who are totally afraid.
Yes.
They will like hide. I've seen this so many times. They'll just like run around and hide. I've had somebody like screech. And it's like there are a lot of, because they do have that look. I mean, they do, which is another reason that attracted me to them, because I don't want people in my space. So you either get the extreme, you know, people are going to come at you, or you're going to get the people who are going to run away from you.
Yeah, exactly.
As using a dog like a Corso for a service dog. But again, working with Labs and Goldens, you walk around with a gorgeous Golden and everyone's like, that thing is adorable, and
right.
you're facing the same problems.
Right, or so. A poodle with like a fluffy coat, or any kind of shepherd, or a Malinois. Everyone asks if it's a shepherd, a German shepherd.
Yeah, you'll get everything under the sun. So,
yes.
I mean, it's not too different. Just be aware that people will be afraid of you.
Right. And that you may have, especially if you choose to crop, or you get a dog that is cropped and docked, whatever, regardless of the breed, you'll have usually comments along those lines, or comments if your dog looks in any way, shape, or form remotely similar to a bully breed. You're going to get the whole pit bull comments, and those may be positive or negative. And so this comes upon your ability as a handler, if you're comfortable with that, if you're comfortable educating, or, you know, or able to, you know, tolerate that to a point. You know, basically what you're comfortable with. But that's a really good point too, especially working with this breed, is that you will have, not just will you have the typical service dog reactions by the public, but you're going to have a little bit more so just because of their breed, and breed biases that do exist in many people.
Oh yeah.
And then last one we touched on protective instincts for service dog work and kind of how to curb them. I think the last one that we have is, do you recommend Corsos for service dog work? I'll let you start answering this question. I know we basically talked about it on and off, but I'll let you finish it.
It's definitely a really big question. It really depends on the person, honestly. If you have a really good support system, so like I said before, my boyfriend's a dog trainer. So he also helps me when Raina and I aren't meshing properly, I guess you can put it. So having that support and having a trainer everywhere I go with me, even as a trainer, really like helps, you know, me say that, oh, the Corso is good for me. But say, you know, your anxiety is out of control, or you know something is just so far that, you know, your dog will react in such a negative manner, then that could really not be the breed for you.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I play back and forth thinking like, oh, would a Golden have been better for this? And it's like, not really. I still don't go back to that thought for me. But for other people, like I sometimes see, and I'm like, you know, maybe a Golden might be like, just try, you know, just hang out with one and see if that's kind of what you feel more comfortable in public with. Because all in all, for most people, at least in my experience, it's going out into public that's the hardest part. So if you need that in public and you don't want to be pointed at, and you don't want people screaming at you everywhere you go, or you don't want people saying your dog must be a fighter, all those things, then it might be best to go with one of the more typical breeds just to stay off the radar.
Right.
But I think that it really just depends on what you want. If you want a challenge, I like challenges, then it worked out. I still train Raina with every other thing that I can find, or try to, at least with time, as much as possible. But, you know, it also depends on your lifestyle. My lifestyle really changed, and taking Raina to school was probably not in the books anymore.
Right.
Literally. But taking her to work back then was really easy to do. I wasn't as trapped, as you can say, in that situation. Raina would have a hard time fitting under desks, you know, little things like that. Stack on, at least personally, they'll stack on to the point where it's like, this is too much, I just can't do it. So it depends on, you know, your support system, how much you want to work on that, work on having a Corso, work on these fear periods we keep talking about, work on the public, work on perceptions, all that kind of stuff, how willing you are to take that challenge on yourself.
Exactly.
And then to just be realistic what you want and what you really need in life. So you might want a Corso, but you might need a Golden.
Exactly.
So just try to, for anybody, just try to really like contemplate on that before just going off and like, I want a Corso. And just running off and getting a Corso. Yeah, they're very different breeds. I mean, everyone's made for a specific reason. So there's a breed out there. I always go back to colors. But yeah, you're not gonna get, a two-seater if you have like a family of 5. It's just not.
That makes sense.
It's always that conversation whenever it's the same with service dogs.
Exactly. And it really does go back to the whole, if that's what you're capable of handling, if that's what you're comfortable with, you have to keep in mind that Corsos will, just with every breed has their own little quirks and things like that. Corsos I think, can be a phenomenal dog for mobility, and a wide variety of other, medical issues, medical needs. But they come with their own set of challenges and their own set of quirks that I would really urge handlers or potential handlers looking at Corsos to become familiar with. And, just as like many of the things we've talked about throughout this live, really looking at, is this, one, something I'm comfortable with? 2, is this something that, again, as you mentioned, that support system, is this something my family's comfortable with? Is this something that my friends, my, significant other, my trainer, is this something that we're all able to handle together? And then, third, looking at, is this, a breed that I'm ready to take on that challenge for? Is this something that I am able to handle those fear periods, those fear reactions? Am I able to work with a dog where when they're afraid or we meet a challenge, can I successfully work this dog through that? And am I willing to work my dog through that? We mentioned Corsos typically tend to mature later. Is this something that I'm comfortable with? And is this something that I am in a position to be able to handle? It really comes back to, yes, Corsos can be fantastic for a variety of needs, especially for in the disabled community, but more so they do come with their own set of challenges. And if you feel as though you're able to handle those, and if you have a good setup and you've done your research, again, they can be fantastic. But you do have to be honest as far as realizing that, these can be really fun dogs, but they can be really serious dogs. And you can develop some really serious issues very quickly if you don't know how to handle them or don't know what you're doing with them. So yeah, it just goes back to, again, that support system and just doing your own research. And I think we can both recommend getting as much hands-on work as you can with the breed, or at least with other Mastiff breeds, before fully committing to this. And talk to breeders, talk to trainers, talk to other people who are knowledgeable, who have experience with this, and just do your researches. Whoops. No, you're fine. Just doing your own research as much as possible.
We're good.
I think is my recommendation that I think you introduced perfectly as well. So I think if there's any other questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, we'll kind of be heading off. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us even through the migration onto the next after they kicked us off. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you guys kind of sticking with us, and love to be able to kind of showcase this side of our dogs. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to DM either of us or reach out to us. We're very happy to help and educate. And there's nothing else. Let's see. Corsos have blown up in popularity. I just think that it's another breed that just kind of, it's just another breed. It's an interesting breed. They look different. They look different than, your Goldens and your Poodles. They have their own unique set of challenges. And I think especially to youth, that sense of a challenge, that sense of having a dog that you can sort of do more with is exciting, which again isn't a problem, but you have to realize or become fully aware of what you are comfortable with doing and what you are both physically, mentally, and emotionally comfortable and able to handle. I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
No, I agree. I think because, they were relatively new and just totally blew up really fast. And I think with them blowing up really fast, there's more of that research on your breeder. So really research on your breeder, and Do they drool? My experience, Raina actually doesn't drool that bad
Yeah.
unless you have food. Once you have food on you, with you, around you, then she'll start to kind of like create a dribble. But I wouldn't call it like the Saint Bernard drool kind of thing going on. They're not constantly drooling.
Right,
It's
right.
just here and there. Enough
Bugattis,
that you would need a rag. No, you're good.
yes.
Yeah.
Bugatti's is definitely after she's drank some water, like immediately drink some water, that she'll drool that around the house.
Yeah.
I haven't had too much of an issue with her like drooling around in public or even so much around food. It's usually just immediately after she has water, so definitely want to have towels on hand for that.
Hmm.
But I'd also say that I specifically chose a Corso that wasn't as jowly as some of other Mastiff breeds are, for sure. So that would also be something that I would take into account when you're looking at lines. Is another thing that could be a detriment to maybe your service dog work or your lifestyle if you're somebody that really doesn't like drool.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't avoid food because of the drool. I just literally carry drool rag.
Oh
I
yeah.
just wipe her off, or I get like pants that I know can handle drool or something like that. It does
that one nice splash. You're like, stay away.
Yeah. It's like if I do want to actually look nice, I'm like, do I need a like drool rag with me? So then I have like a pretty one that has like flowers on it. It's like kind of the compromise of all the drool.
Right. There's another question asked on here about the biggest issues when working your Corsos. We talked about this earlier on in the live after I put them up, which will probably be tonight or tomorrow. Feel free to kind of go through and watch through it because we talked on a couple different things throughout it, but usually I would say we summed it up to usually their fear periods or fear reactivity, which stems from their protective instincts, is usually kind of one of the biggest issues when working Corsos through service dogs or through service dog work. And then let's see, Corso's working drives consistent through age. In my experience so far, I'm sure there's been a mellowing out of every dog I've ever owned. So I'm sure that they will mellow out, or Bugatti will mellow out. I think that's kind of to be expected with any dog, especially for service dog work.
Yeah, I mean, Raina's mellowed out, and she's a bit over too. She's already started to mellow, which is nice. She's starting to set in her ways. Not many things. Don't get surprised by all these random fear periods. Now she's just growing.
Right.
So,
yeah, Bugatti's not
keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting to that point. We're getting to that point. She hasn't had her first heat yet, so we're like, all right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a late bloomer for sure. Sure, yeah, you can go ahead. So we're gonna get Boo out here in a second, but yeah, if you guys had any other questions, I think otherwise, try with the food, avoid it. You answered that perfect. I'm just looking through the questions to make sure we didn't miss anything for you guys. I'm glad you guys found this informative. That was the whole point. We wanted to make it super helpful. And like I said, we're gonna I'll put this live up either I'm gonna work it around a bit, so I'll either work it tonight or I might put it up sometime this weekend. Here's my honey girl. Hey, Boo. Oh, okay. She's
male versus female.
playing around with everyone else. Bugatti. Bugatti. Hold on. I'm trying to figure out. Hey, Boo. Bugatti. Hi, honey.
In terms of male versus female temperament, which I see over here, so Raina is definitely like a worker. She will want to like work and work and work. I find the males to be more clingy. They like their people a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
They are like glue to them, and they'll like love you for everything. The girls, at least Raina, she is here. She likes being in my vicinity, but she's not really one to be like on top of me, for example.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to get her to cuddle with me, and she's like, don't touch me.
Yeah, Bugatti's the same way. I'm wondering if that's a female Corso thing, because Bugatti is very much so. She's not. It's sad. This is probably something to talk about. To me, it's sad, but she's not cuddly really at all. She doesn't like to really snuggle. She doesn't really like to be close. And now it doesn't mean she doesn't like me. She loves to do things with me. She'll bring me toys. She'll, like, anytime if I'm like, all right, we'll play or work or train, she's like, yes, right here. Yeah. But she's never been like a cuddly, snuggly dog at all. Again, not bad, but that's just how she is, and that's just how she chooses to express herself, and she just has a different way of showing her affection. So
yeah, and all my males in the past have always been like glue, so it might just be male female overall. I mean, yeah. Raina likes being like, she likes seeing where I am. She likes seeing like everyone who's here. She'll keep an eye on whoever's moving specifically. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Sometimes it's just who they are.
Yeah. No, for sure. Let's see. She was my first intact female, so that's kind of I think that kind of plays into it too, kind of some of that as well.
This is my first intact female.
Like I said, I still haven't had her first heat cycle, so I'm still looking forward to all that fun stuff.
She got clingy.
Oh, really? I'm not surprised.
She did. I was happy. I was like,
you're like, love me. So I'll focus it back on Bugatti because everyone seems to like wanna like her more than me. So yeah, I think that was everything. Making sure that I got everything. Yeah, we're just talking about courses in here. So thank you guys. I just wanted to say thank you, one, for following us and participating in this, and asking your questions and being curious about the breed. Lindsey and I are happy to educate, and again, if there's any questions that after you watch this live, whether it's now currently or in the future, feel free to reach out to us with any questions, and we're happy to help and happy to educate and happy to share the love we have for this breed. She's like, I am a sun dog. All right, thank you guys. Well, I think I'll let you all get going. Lindsey, thank you again so much for joining me on this live.
Thank
for
you.
Participating. Bugatti and I both appreciate it very much.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
Yes. All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and everyone be safe and have fun, and hope it all goes well.
All right. Bye, everyone.